So let's visualize the merit field in the space in front of us and ourselves surrounded by all the sentient beings in all the different realms, but appearing as human beings. Okay. So in Samsara, we have the dukkha that everybody experiences: birth, aging, sickness, death. And that's truly something, those four, truly something quite horrible. But if we look around, how much dukkha do sentient beings cause each other? Through acting out of hatred, out of greed, whatever, then all this quite unnecessary suffering comes about. It's not due to earthquakes or cyclones or the natural aging process or illness. It's the pain and suffering that sentient beings inflict on each other out of their confusion. So let's make a decision that not to do that ourselves, to be quite mindful of what our mental states are so that none of our words and actions harm others. And seeing how much unnecessary dukkha there is in samsara. Let's have a strong intention not to contribute to that ourselves, and instead to do our best to create harmony, to lift up the oppressed, to include the excluded, and to help settle disputes. So with that kind of motivation of compassion, when we look around and see who is most capable of bringing about peace and harmony amongst living beings, we see that it's the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so let's generate the intention to become like them, to completely purify our minds, develop all good qualities. And then make the welfare of living beings our primary focus. So may that also be our motivation for sharing the Dharma this evening. So this week's Lamrim lesson on the news had the coincidence of dealing with two different mass shootings. The first one was what happened in Connecticut at Sandy Hook, where 20-something first and second and third graders were murdered about 4 years ago by a gunman, a young man, who killed his mother and then went to the school and started shooting it up. So there was one trial going on about regarding him. He already pled guilty, and so he was convicted. And the jury was to decide whether he faces life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. So they had many of the parents of these kids testifying. And you can only imagine the grief that the parents had when their little, first, second grade, they're really little, and they're so cute in a way. I mean, they're little kids who run around, but they're also, quite cute. And so expressing their pain to the jury. I don't know if the gunman was in the courtroom. They made no mention of that. I suspect he wasn't, but he, I think it would have been good if he were there so he could really see the effect of his actions on others. But that's a very good example of pain that is totally unnecessary. Yeah, what he did and the pain these families are experiencing. None of that had to happen. Yeah. It's not a natural disaster or anything. Okay, so you saw that. You also saw the pain of attachment when we're attached to living beings and then something happens to them, the experience of pain that arises. Okay, so that was one thing that was going on, one trial that was going on. Then the second one was regarding the Parkland High School shooting. Remember that one just a few years ago on Valentine's Day, and they killed, I forget how many kids, and injured 17. And yeah. So what was very interesting about that one, I mean, again, tragedy, just so unnecessary, and the parents really shattered and broken because of what happened to their kids. But that was a trial regarding Alex Jones, okay? So he's the guy from InfoWars who made up a big lie that made him a lot of money. And he said that the whole thing at Parkland. No, it's the other way around, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the parents who were so upset, that was the Parkland parents. And then the ones with the little kids, one family was suing Alex Jones because he said that the whole Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax, that it didn't happen, and that everybody there were actors. Okay, so the parents were actors. the kids were actors. There weren't really any kids who were killed. And so for 4 years, he's been talking like this, and it's just been devastating for the parents because, he has a big following on a radio station and yells and screams and, puts his false story out there. And then, people start sending death threats to the parents. How dare you make up a scene like this just in order to make money, and accusing the parents of all sorts of things. So he had, not shown up for some of the things he was supposed to show up for in the court. So he was guilty from that. And so this trial that was going on was to decide how much damages. Yeah. And what was so interesting is this guy, the parents are just, they're crying, they're tragedy stricken. And one of the mothers says, I'm not an actress. I am not an actress. And the father said, my child existed. Yeah, because saying that it was all made up was like saying that their child never existed. He said, my child existed. Mother's saying, I'm not an actress. So he did not admit anything. He was shaking his head the whole time the parents were talking like this. And then afterwards, he went back to his show, and he gave his radio show. And he talked about how he made up just a total other lie about what was happening in court. And I convinced them that I didn't mean any harm. Yes, I made a mistake, but I didn't mean any harm. And the mother actually came up and hugged me. And he just made up some totally off the wall, crazy thing. Right after he got fined $4 million for as damages to the family, because he made a lot of money off of this, by talking to so many people and drawing them in. And then he had all these products that he was selling online, and all these people bought his products. He made millions of dollars off of telling this lie about Sandy Hook and the families. So he was fined $4 million. No, hold on. $4 million for for enduring, yeah. And then he was fined an additional $45 million as punitive damages. So $49 million altogether, yeah, which is not so great considering the amount of money his company has and how much money he made through his program. So it was just amazing to me that he just continued with the lies, even after everything was said in court and he was fined $49 million. And it makes you wonder, what's the story with this person? Does he know the difference between truth and falsity? Yeah. Or what is it? Yeah. What is, motivating him besides the money to inflict so much pain on somebody else with his lies? So I was thinking about it in terms of karma. because I had been talking with somebody earlier about habits. So it seems like Alex Jones has the habit of lying. Yeah. And when we talk about karma, the of the different results, one result is to do the action again. Okay, so and this is often said to be the worst result, because even if the action itself isn't so bad, the fact of doing it again and again and again makes it quite heavy and really ingrains it in the mind. Okay, so I was thinking sometimes we just kind of say, oh, well, whatever our fault is, we say, oh, that's just a habit. As if, well, it's just a habit. It's nothing. It's not so bad. It's just a bad habit I have. Okay. But if you look at his bad habit and the kind of suffering he inflicted on other people and that he himself will experience because of this, suffering in this life and suffering in future lives, because lying creates the cause for people not to believe you. Yeah. So in future lives, people not believing him, no matter what he says. So I was really thinking about that, and how it's not so wise to just think, oh, well, it's a bad habit. I hear people say, oh, well, I just lose my temper. It's a bad habit. That's just the way I am. Yeah, but you lose your temper again and again, and it keeps on planting those karmic seeds in the mind, not only of the action, but of the motivation of the action. You keep reinforcing that same affliction. Yeah. And how dangerous that is, just to say, oh, well, it's a bad habit. No, not a big thing. So anyway, something to think about here. And just both of these school shooting, well, involving school shooting, and just showing how much totally unnecessary suffering human beings inflict on each other, either by shooting them or by making up lies. Yeah, totally unnecessary, as if we don't have enough suffering already, with natural disasters and having a body that, ages and dies. Okay, so something just to keep in mind. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was the Lamrim lesson on American news this week. I'm sure there were many more, but that was kind of the one people were focusing more on, I think. Okay. So we're still in the book Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. We are approaching, we're moving along in it. So we're in the chapter called Freedom from Cyclic Existence, and specifically in the section that's called the Two Obscurations. Yeah. So the previous section was stages leading to liberation and full awakening. And we talk there about how the hearers, or Shravakas and solitary realizers, progress along the path, and also how the bodhisattvas progress along the path. Okay, so here it's talking this section about the two obscurations, which are what the Shravakas and solitary realizers and bodhisattvas are trying to abandon. Okay, Some of them want to abandon both obscurations. The Shravakas and solitary realizers focus just on one of them. Okay, so the minds of ordinary sentient beings are veiled by two types of obscurations: afflictive obscurations and cognitive obscurations. The former principally prevents liberation from samsara. The latter are mainly obstacles to full awakening. Okay, so the two kind of ends of the path, liberation or full awakening. So afflictive obscurations get in the way of liberation, and cognitive obscurations in the way of full awakening. Okay, that's not to say that the afflictive obscurations don't prevent full awakening. They do, and they have to be eliminated first before the cognitive ones. But because the cognitive ones are the last ones to go, they're kind of seen as the chief things. Yeah. Okay. The state of having eliminated afflictive obscurations is nirvana or liberation. The state of having additionally removed cognitive obscurations is full awakening, non-abiding nirvana, and Buddhahood. Okay. So afflictive obscurations are coarse and subtle self-grasping ignorance and its seeds, and the three poisons of confusion, attachment, and animosity and their seeds. In short, afflictions and their seeds constitute afflictive obscurations. Okay, so the coarse and subtle self-grasping ignorance, the coarse one refers grasping a self-sufficient, substantially existent person. The subtle one, and the subtle one, inherently existent persons and phenomena. Okay, and in addition, the three poisons, okay, confusion, which is often translated as ignorance. So here, when it's talked about in this way, since the self-grasping that apprehends inherent existence is already listed as self-grasping ignorance, the confusion here is emphasizing the confusion about karma, okay, and not knowing what to practice, what to abandon, what is virtuous, what is not virtuous, okay, and so that creates a whole lot of problems, as you can see through the two examples that I just talked about. Okay, attachment, clinging attachment, based on exaggerating the good qualities of someone or something and clinging on to it. And then animosity, based on the exaggerating or projecting negative qualities that aren't there and wanting to get away from it or strike back at it in some way. Okay, and their seeds. Okay, so the seeds here are the seeds of afflictions. Yeah, not the karmic seeds, but the seeds of afflictions that connect one moment of an affliction to another moment. Okay, so you're angry today, you're angry tomorrow, but in the middle, while you're asleep, you aren't angry. So your anger has gone into a seed form, and then the next day, some little thing happens, and you get angry again. Okay, so that's the afflictive obscurations. Yeah. Then the cognitive obscurations are more subtle and difficult to remove from the mind stream. And that's why first the afflictive, when somebody's practicing to become a Buddha, that first they remove the afflictive obscurations, then the cognitive obscurations. Actually, in the different tenet systems have lots of different schema about how you eliminate these two. But in the Prasangika, first it's one, then it's the other. Compared with afflictive obscurations, which are like onions in a pot, cognitive obscurations are like the smell that remains after the onions have been removed. You know how that is? Yeah. Onions in a pot is, okay, but there can be really stinky things. Even you clean that away, the smell is still there. Okay. So that's the cognitive obscurations. So the cognitive obscurations are the latencies of self-grasping ignorance, the latencies of the three poisons, the mistaken dualistic appearances that arise from them, and the defilement of apprehending the two truths as different entities. So all of these are abstract composites, not consciousnesses, although there's some debate about that. Jamyang Shepa has his own ideas. Okay, when we talk about the afflictive obscurations, most of those are consciousnesses, except the seeds of the afflictions. They are abstract composites. With the cognitive obscurations, none of them are consciousnesses. Okay, so what are these? The latencies of the self-grasping ignorance. So latencies and seeds can be very similar. The latencies, again, they're not consciousnesses. They're the predispositions, you could say, the tendencies, the imprints. Yeah, they're the smell of the onions that are still there. So it's the latencies of the self-grasping ignorance. So the self-grasping ignorance and its seeds were afflictive obscurations. The latencies of the self-grasping ignorance are cognitive obscurations. Okay. And then the same thing about the three poisons: confusion, attachment, and animosity. Yeah. The latencies of those three poisons. So they're not the consciousnesses, they're the residual, they're the smell that's left, the residual stuff that's contaminating the mind. Okay. Then also the mistaken dualistic appearances that arise from them. Yeah. In other words, that things appear to exist inherently, although they don't. And we're going to get into the word appearance in the next paragraph, okay, what exactly it means. And then the defilements of apprehending the two truths as different entities, because we have the conventional truths or veiled truths, and then the ultimate truths, which are emptinesses. The conventional or veiled truths are everything that's not emptiness, basically. I mean, all the things that we see around us, things that ignorance sees as true, even though they do not exist as they appear, but ignorance thinks that they do. Okay, so they're the mistaken dualistic appearances that you still have you may have at the higher levels for the arhats and also for the bodhisattvas in the 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds. They have removed the afflictive obscurations, but still, when they're not in meditative equipoise on emptiness, directly realizing emptiness, everything still appears to them as inherently existent. Okay? They know it's a false appearance, but it still appears that way. And because of that appearance, then the two truths, the veiled truths and the ultimate truths, are seen as two different entities. In actual fact, they are one nature. That one nature does not mean they're the same. One nature means that if one of them is there, the other one at some point has to also be there. So if you have an affliction, you have the emptiness of the affliction. Just like if you have a person, you have the emptiness of the person. So everybody who's not a Buddha, they see these veiled truths and emptinesses as two different phenomena. They can't see that they know it, but they can't see it, that that they are one nature, that they're inseparable. And when they see, when they're in meditative equipoise and focused on emptiness, they only see emptiness, no veiled truths appear. When they come out of their meditation and they're looking around and seeing everything, they only see all these veiled truths. They do not see their emptiness. Okay, so they can't see both of the two truths at the same time. Only the Buddha can do that. Okay, now, I know there's a lot of new words here. This whole chapter, this whole book, this whole series filled with new words. So the word appearance does not adequately indicate the meaning of the Tibetan word nangwa, which can refer to either appearance or perception. Okay? By saying appearance of inherent existence, we may mistakenly think that the obscuration is external to our minds, that phenomena from their side appear inherently existent. Okay? Like there's the appearance of inherent existence. Or we say like, oh, there's the appearance of pink. Pink is outside, pink appears to me. So we say the appearance of inherent existence as if inherent existence were outside and it's appearing to us. Okay? No, that's not what's happening. Okay? First of all, because things are not inherently existent. So inherent existence is not outside. Yeah. In fact, inherent existence doesn't even exist at all. Okay. Whereas the obscuration is associated with our minds, we perceive inherent existence, which does not exist at all. So it says the appearance of inherent existence, but it's actually something, appearance isn't exactly the right word. Perceive isn't either, because with perceive, we kind of think, well, maybe it's a consciousness, which it's not. Okay. But it's the pollution on our mind, so that when we apprehend things, they seem to be inherently existent. So the arhats, the pure ground bodhisattvas, they've realized emptiness directly in meditative equipoise. But when they arise from their meditative equipoise and look around, there's still the appearance of inherent existence to them. That hasn't been eliminated yet. And they know that appearance or that perception, because the problem is the mind, not the object. So they know that that's false, but it's still there. So when we say that those aryas see everything as like illusions, that's what it means. An illusion is something that appears to exist one way, but exists in another way. So when, outside of their meditative equipoise, when Buddha bear appears to them, Buddha bear, seems in their mind when they're apprehending Buddha bear, that there's an inherently existent Buddha bear, but they know that that is totally false, that that doesn't exist. Okay, and so that's what seeing as illusion means, and it has to be as like illusion. Yeah, because if you say objects are illusions, then you're kind of implying they're non-existent. But if you say they are like illusions, then you're saying they appear one way, but they don't exist in that way. Okay. So this is quite important to understand. Okay, so by saying appearance of inherent existence, we may mistakenly think that the obscuration is external to our minds, that phenomena from their side appear inherently existent, like radiating out inherent existence. But the obscuration is actually associated with our mind. Okay, if it's like our mind's the mirror, and the mirror has dirt on it, so that everything then that's reflected in the mirror, it doesn't appear properly. So we perceive inherent existence, which does not exist at all. Okay, so this is also an important point. Okay, inherent existence has never existed, it never will exist. So realizing the emptiness of inherent existence is actually just realizing things as they actually are. The realization of emptiness doesn't make the objects empty. They're already empty. The realization just sees them as they actually exist, okay, in meditative equipoise. So please keep this in mind when we talk about the appearance of inherent existence. Okay, so the aspect of the mind that continues to have mistaken appearance of inherent existence is called manifest cognitive obscurations. Okay, so the aspect of the mind, we've realized emptiness, and we still, to our minds, things still seem inherently existent. That's called manifest cognitive obscurations. While the latencies left from the afflictions that cause these appearances are called factors of a seed. Okay, latency and seed are, all seeds are latencies, but not all latencies are seeds. I think that's the way it goes, but they're very close. Okay, so the latencies are subtle tendencies. By their power, the mind continues to have the appearance or the perception of inherent existence. Okay, so the mind has this cloud, and that's how it continues to relate to veiled truths. Mistaken dualistic appearances are the aspect of the mind that continues to have the mistaken appearances of all internal and external phenomena as existing inherently. Okay. This aspect of the mind obscures all 6 consciousnesses, the 5 sense consciousnesses and the mental consciousness. Okay, so even now, we still have the cognitive obscurations and the manifest ones. So things still appear to us as inherently existent. And then with the afflictive obscurations, we grasp that appearance as true. Okay, that's with the afflictive obscuration of self-grasping ignorance. Okay, is this clear? Yeah, the latency from the self-grasping, makes the appearance or the perception. And then us ordinary beings who still have the afflictive obscurations, we then accept that appearance as true. And that's for all of our consciousnesses, our eye, visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, and mental consciousnesses, all are befuddled in that way. So both ordinary beings and Aryas who are not in meditative equipoise on emptiness have these mistaken dualistic appearances. The only consciousness in sentient beings' continuums that lacks them is the Arya's exalted wisdom in meditative equipoise on emptiness. Okay, so all the other consciousnesses of sentient beings, from the hell realms to the highest bodhisattvas just before they attain awakening, they still have these mistaken dualistic appearances. Okay. With the appearance perception of inherently existent objects, within the appearance or perception of inherently existent objects, one part exists, one part does not. The flower exists, but its being inherently existent does not. So the flower is not a cognitive obscuration. The flower is just a flower. It's minding its own business. But its appearance, it's appearing to be inherently existent, is a cognitive obscuration. Okay, so the flower is the part that exists. Its perception appearance as being inherently existent. That, there's no such thing as inherent existent. It doesn't exist. When the mind is freed from this mistaken appearance or mistaken perception, conventionally existent things do not cease to exist. Rather, they no longer appear inherently existent. Okay, so when we realize emptiness directly, that, like I said before, it doesn't make things empty, and it also doesn't make veiled truths non-existent. The realization of emptiness can destroy the grasping at true existence, at inherent existence. And the realization of emptiness also is what cleanses the mind from the latencies of inherent existence. Okay, so that veiled things still exist, veiled truths still exist, but to the perspective of a Buddha who no longer has these cognitive obscurations, there's no longer the appearance or perception of them as inherently existent. To the arhats and the pure ground bodhisattvas, there is. So the defilements of apprehending the two truths as different entities prevents seeing all phenomena, veiled truths, and their emptinesses simultaneously. Okay. Since arhats and pure ground bodhisattvas have this defilement, they cannot simultaneously cognize the two truths. If they perceive one directly, the other one they can't perceive directly. Okay. But if they perceive, let's say, the emptiness of something, then after they arise from their meditative equipoise, they're no longer, perceiving emptiness, but that mind influences how they perceive veiled truths. And so that's why it's said that they see them as like illusions. Okay, so the arhats and the pure ground bodhisattvas must alternate consciousnesses. Their meditative equipoise on emptiness sees only emptiness. Veiled truths, which are the substrata or the base of that emptiness, that is, they are the objects that are empty. So these veiled truths do not appear to that mind focused non-conceptually and directly on emptiness. When these aryas arise from their meditative equipoise on emptiness, in the time of subsequent attainment, when they're walking around and doing things, they know conventionalities, but cannot perceive their emptiness directly. Yeah, so they're walking around and they can, they can cook lunch and they can vacuum and do all these things. They're not perceiving the emptiness of the objects at that time, but their mind is influenced by having had that direct perception. So they're perceiving things as like illusions. But because this defilement has been eradicated in Buddhas, in Buddhahood, Buddhas can directly and simultaneously know the two truths. So they're the only ones who can do that. Yeah. Latencies of attachment and other afflictions also cause arhats to have dysfunctional behaviors of body and speech. So this is something quite interesting. Yeah. So we're talking about arhats here. Yeah. Having dysfunctional behaviors of body and speech that are breaches of discipline. So, for example, arhats, these are beings who have attained liberation. Yeah. Arhats may inadvertently jump around owing to the latency of attachment. They may spontaneously call someone a name owing to the latency of anger. And their clairvoyance or their supersensory perception may be unclear owing to the latency of ignorance. Okay, so it's interesting, due to the latencies that are still contaminating the mind. Yeah. Although these arhats do not have any negative intention at all, yeah, due to the latencies, due to the habit of when they, before they realized emptiness, then they still have these habits. So they say that an arhat, let's say, who had been a monkey before, yeah, not directly in the life before becoming an arhat, but some previous time, then there's just the habit to, jump around and swing from trees. Okay. Yeah. And the ones who have some kind of before a habit with anger, or we take Alex Jones with lying, then, even they become an arhat, yeah, the tendency to lie or to call people names, even though they don't have any kind of afflictive motivation. Okay, so it's just the latency that causes that. And then the lack of clarity in their supersensory perception is due to the latency of ignorance. So these infrequent occurrences are not due to any negative intention or to ignorance on arhat's part, because they have eliminated all afflictions. So Chandrakirti's auto-commentary to the supplements says, although arhats have abandoned afflictions, they have the latencies due to which they will jump as they did when formerly they were monkeys. Those latencies are overcome only in omniscience and Buddhahood, okay, but not in others. Okay, so I don't know, I might wind up, if I become an arhat, constantly blowing my nose because of allergies, or who knows, people, you look at some of your habits, maybe somebody's going to be dancing around with Buddha bear as an arhat. Yeah, it could be worse things, but yeah. Okay. So the same idea is also found in later Pali commentaries. They explain that although arhats have eliminated all obscurations due to afflictions, they still have the latencies of afflictions which can induce conduct that is a breach of decorum. This is because, unlike the Buddha, arhats have not eliminated the obstruction to all knowing and thus do not know all existence. Yeah. So the Pali tradition says that even to a Buddha is all-knowing, but in the sense that a Buddha can know everything, but they don't perceive everything at the same time. They have to turn their mind to something. But when they turn their mind to it, then they can perceive everything that exists. The Sanskrit tradition says that the Buddhas are omniscient and all the things simultaneously appear to their minds. Okay. But here, the Pali tradition is, unlike the Buddhas, arhats have not eliminated the obstruction to all knowing and thus do not know all existence. So the commentary to the Udana says, vasana, which is latency, is a mere capacity to behave in certain ways similar to the behavior of those who still have defilements. It is engendered by the defilements that have been harbored in the mind from beginningless time and remain in the mental continuum of the arhat even after the defilements have been abandoned. Yeah, they remain. What remains is a mere habitual tendency. So the vasanas or latencies are not found in the mental continuum of a Buddha who has removed the defilements by abandoning the obstruction to all knowing, but they are found in the minds of hearers or shravakas and solitary realizers. So something to correct in that verse. The vasanas are not found in the mental continuum of a Buddha who has removed the defilements. To put it in the present tense doesn't work because he has removed them. Okay, so an example is the bhikkhu Pilindavaccha. Although he was an arhat and had eradicated conceit and contempt, he continued to address fellow bhikshus as outcasts. So you could have a community of bhikshus, and then somebody who's, he's an arhat is still calling people, you're an untouchable, you're a lower caste, having this kind of bad attitude and bad speech, not because of any negative intention at all. Okay. Now, I wonder how the other bhikshus took it. Yeah. Could they say to themselves, oh, he has no intention, this is just because of a latency? Or do they still get offended? Who is he telling me I'm lower caste? No. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Because people may still get upset, even though he has no intention. Like now, it happens too. Okay. Even we aren't yet arhats. So this occurred, he continued to address fellow bhikshus as outcasts. This occurred owing to the force of predispositions or latencies established by his habitual behavior as a Brahman during the 500 previous lifetimes. Okay? So they say, being born as a Brahmin, you're upper caste, that must be due to good karma. But in his case, it made a lot of weird imprints in his mind. Some schools speak of non-afflictive ignorance. Okay, the Prasangikas do not. Yeah, or if they hear that term, they're not referring to what the lower schools say. To the Vaibhasikas, this mainly, the non-afflictive ignorance mainly impedes attaining all-knowing and consists of the four causes of non-knowingness. Okay, so this is how the Vaibhasikas see the arhats, and why they say that the Buddha is all-knowing, but the arhats are not all-knowing, okay? Because they have this non-afflictive ignorance. So there's four causes of non-knowingness, or four ways that this ignorance, the non-afflictive ignorance, influences things. So the first is the non-afflictive ignorance of the profound and subtle qualities of a Buddha. So an arhat knows a lot about a Buddha, but not all of the profound and subtle qualities of the Buddha, because they still have that non-afflictive ignorance. Okay, that impedes knowing everything. Okay, the second and third of the fourth are ignorance due to distant place or time of the object. So the Vaibhasikas say that an arhat, something's very far away, they can't see it, whereas the Buddha can. Or if something happened, long time ago, or will happen a long time in the future, then the arhats can't see it, but the Buddha can. And then the fourth cause of non-knowingness is ignorance of the nature of the object, okay, such as the subtle details of karma and its effects. Okay, so to the Vaibhasikas and some of the other lower schools who assert non-afflictive ignorance, it's what prevents, it's a kind of ignorance that prevents seeing all these different things, like the subtle and gross qualities of the Buddha, things that are far away in time and place, and the nature of the object, such as knowing all the details of karma and its effects. According to Prasangikas, non-afflictive ignorance refers to the latencies of ignorance and is not a consciousness. So the Vaibhasikas say two kinds of ignorance. They're both consciousnesses. The Prasangikas say, you hear the term non-afflicted ignorance, but it's not a consciousness. Okay, it's just the latencies of ignorance. Okay. Any questions, comments so far? Yeah.
It doesn't mention Arya Bodhisattvas having the same problem as these arhats. So how can you comment on that?
I haven't heard it described in terms of the bodhisattva, the pure ground bodhisattvas. I've heard it described in terms of the arhats. So I'm not sure. Yeah, but if the bodhisattvas don't perceive it, it could be because of the bodhicitta that helps them to refrain from those kinds of actions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think seeing things like illusions includes seeing things as dependently arising? Like considering all the factors of how things exist? It's not really mentioned much.
It's kind of getting there, but I don't think you're actually seeing dependent arising directly. But you're probably seeing that things, if they aren't empty, I mean, if they aren't truly existent, then they must be dependent arising. Yeah. But they still have some kind of weird appearance like that. By the way, when they say illusion-like appearances, it doesn't mean like appearances, when you're on an acid trip. Yeah. Because people hear that and it's like, oh, these bodhisattvas, they're like me, on the acid trip and, seeing colors and things going here and there and sparkling and, so that's not the meaning of illusion-like appearance. And seeing things as just totally chaotic and bouncing around, that's also not the meaning of illusion-like appearances. Okay. Yeah. And it's also not like seeing things as just, a bunch of little particles or stuff like that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Where would we classify contaminated karma and its seeds in the two obscurations?
Oh, the karma and its seeds are not either of those of the obscurations. Okay, the karma and the seeds of karma are the second noble truth. They're true origins, but they're not afflictive obscurations. Yeah, and they're not cognitive obscurations either.
So they don't.
They can obscure the mind, but I think they say for arhats, arhats may still have the seeds of contaminated karma on their mind stream, but those seeds cannot ripen to throw a rebirth because they don't have the links of craving and clinging.
Your example from the beginning of habits, those would still be there, and you still need to kind of clear them. So won't they obscure?
Well, that's why they're called cognitive obscurations. These are the latencies. Okay, they're the latencies of the afflictions. So the latencies, they may be related to karmic seeds, but karmic seeds may just be too gross. These latencies are much, much subtler. Okay. And also, as they progress on the path, they're also neutralizing a lot of the karmic seeds. Okay.
They're not considered obscuring.
You have to ask somebody else. Yeah. It seems like they would obscure, but they're not one of the two obscurations. Okay. Like the self-centered mind certainly obscures the mind, but it's not one of the two obscurations. Okay. So it's not, I think a habit is probably much, much grosser than these latencies. Yeah. But you can put that on your list of Geshe questions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about this, the defilement of apprehending the two truths as different entities, and what the cause of that is, and how that relates to the mistaken dualistic appearance that arises from the latencies of afflictions.
They're all definitely related, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you have mistaken dualistic appearances of things appearing inherently existent, then, to think that you can see the two truths simultaneously when one is emptiness, and the other one is veiled truths, you're not going to be able to do that. Yeah. And was there another part to the question?
The text explicitly identifies the latencies of the afflictions causing the mistaken dualistic appearance.
Yeah.
But it doesn't identify explicitly identify the cause of the defilement of apprehending the two truths as different entities.
It's the latencies there too. Yeah.
So I got a little bit stuck here in this in particular with the word defilement. Because it seems like some translators or some writers will sometimes use defilement to mean affliction.
Yes, it's one of those words that has multiple meanings. Some people translate it as stains. Some people as defilements. Sometimes defilements includes afflictions. Sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. But about the karma, I think, for example, a Buddha may have karmic connection with some sentient beings that is stronger than a karmic connection with other sentient beings. Okay? So that kind of karma would not be obscuring a Buddha's mind. It's just because of the frequency or type of relationship they had with somebody before. And it would also be coming from the side of the sentient being. Yeah, that sentient being, because of karma being the actions that were done before, not the seeds. Okay, so remember, we use the word karma in a variety of ways. It usually refers to the strict meaning is the action. We often use it to refer to the karmic seeds. Okay, and sometimes we use the word karma to refer to the result of the action. So it gets a little bit confusing there. Yeah, because when you were saying about karma obscuring the mind, I was thinking karmic seeds obscuring the mind. Yeah, because the karma, the actions were done before, maybe when they were sentient beings. Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking of contaminated karma.
Yeah.
And also, like, we do purification of all these negative actions, and why it's not classified as something that obscures if you've done all these negativities in your mind stream, and it's not part of this afflictive obscuration.
Yeah, that's just the way they chose to categorize things.
So this is the categorization under which Abhidhamma kind of, is that a technical definition?
Yeah. When they talk about the two obscurations, this is how they're explained. Although, like I said, sometimes some people might say that cognitive obscurations are consciousnesses. Yeah, but the general thing is that they aren't. Yeah. Okay. So the next section I would prefer to wait on because there's quite a bit to explain on that. Yeah. So maybe we'll end now. Yeah, unless you have other questions or comments or anything. Yeah.
Venerable Losang and I were talking earlier today, and he brought up a question that I'd like to know, and that is, in the earlier section we were talking about hearers and or Shravakas and solitary realizers and how they progress through these stream enter, once returner, non-returner. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen that perfectly mapped to path of seeing, path of meditation? It seems like it's clear that the stream enterer is on the path of seeing, but then the demarcations are interesting. There isn't a line that says then they enter the path of meditation.
Yeah.
I just wonder if you know of a specific map.
No, I haven't seen it where they say, because going from stream enterer to once returner is by decreasing the strength of sensual desire and malice. And I've never heard any, kind of, well, when you've eliminated exactly this much, then that's comparable to the path of meditation. I haven't heard that. Yeah. It's a different formulation.
Is this spelled out in the 20 Sanghas? I've never studied that, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah. This has to do with the 20 Sanghas, which is, if you like math and puzzles, 20 Sanghas is really fun. Yeah. If you don't, then you get confused. But 20 Sanghas is talking about all the different ways that somebody can go to arhatship. Yeah. And some people just go very directly, or very methodically, first approaching stream enter, then fruit of stream enter, approaching once returner, fruit of once returner, approaching non-returner, fruit of non-returner, approaching arhat, fruit of arhat. Some people do like that. But then there's some people who can go from one of the parts of stream enter to non-returner and kind of skip over once returners, and how many lifetimes they will spend in different realms as they're eliminating the defilement. So there's a whole lot of permutations. Yeah. And it's quite kind of fun to look at it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Venerable, what is meditative equipoise?
That's when you are focused single-pointedly. Here we usually talk about meditative equipoise on emptiness. Maybe it can be on other things, but usually we talk about it in terms of emptiness. And so it's the ability to focus single-pointedly on emptiness without falling asleep, without any distraction. You're completely immersed in emptiness and nothing else is appearing to that mind. Although we've been having discussion with some people, it seems like the term meditative equipoise on emptiness could, in some cases, also appear to indicate somebody with an inferential realization of emptiness, who's focused on that single-pointedly, yeah, as well as someone who has a direct perception of emptiness. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The sharp faculty practitioners go the wisdom side of the path first to make sure that enlightenment is possible.
Right.
What keeps the modest faculty practitioners going?
Faith.
Faith.
Faith, yeah. And so it doesn't mean blind faith, but they have faith in the Buddha, they have faith in their teacher, they understand something about the path, and they have some kind of convictional faith about that. Yeah, because they talk of, disciples, faith disciples and wisdom disciples. And they talk about this, the Pali tradition talks about it too. Okay, let's dedicate. Okay, so faith doesn't always mean blind faith. Yeah.
It just seems like the realization of emptiness is so much more powerful as a convincing thing.
Yes, but it's also much harder. Yeah. I mean, we're practicing now. Do any of us have an inferential realization of emptiness? But we keep going. We have some kind of confidence in that the Buddha knows what he was talking about, and we understand some basics about emptiness. Yeah.